Ladies and gentlemen, on this Gaming.com video, we're going to be talking all about technology in gaming. As usual, we're going to be doing a daily dose of everything that's happening in the tech industry, and a hell of a lot has happened thanks to GDC. We're going to start things out with AMD. We're going to talk about their roadmap and the fact that Polaris is most likely going to be using HBM2 and GDDR5, and then we're going to talk more about performance per dollar, and then we're going to finish things off with Intel's Kaby Lake and Cannon Lake, specifically about the release dates. Now, this is also a series of articles which you can find in the video's description if you want more information regarding a specific topic. So, the first things first that I think we need to talk about would be the roadmap, because let's face it, it's the big talking point at the moment. So, essentially speaking, AMD revealed their roadmap for the first time regarding what they're planning to release over the next couple of years. Obviously, at the moment, we have 28nm GPUs. We've had 28nm for some time now, as you probably are aware, and Polaris is going to see the reduction of this all the way down to 14nm FinFET. However, that's going to happen this year. The year after that is going to be Vega, and then finally we're going to see Navi, or at least that's as far as they're willing to provide information for at the moment. Now, the real interesting thing is Vega is listed to be HBM2, while Navi is listed to be next generation memory and scalability. Next generation memory, I'm going to assume is going to be either a successor to HBM3, or rather a successor to HBM2, let's say HBM3, or something completely different. Whether that's stacked dies, whether it's something completely different, we just don't know. Vega, however, is the one that threw us completely for a loop, because the information we'd had up until this point was Polaris was going to be utilising HBM2, unless it was something like an intermediary GPU, let's say for the sake of argument the equivalent of the R9 380X or something like that. We certainly didn't expect that to be using HBM2. We expected, of course, some derivative of GDDR5 technology. This does not appear to be the case, and instead Vega would be the GPU technology which is going to be debuting HBM2, and Polaris is going to be using something along the lines of GDDR5 or HBM1. Now, this does make a great deal of sense. I know what you're going to say, but why? I mean, why the hell would they do that? And it's a really good question, but it makes sense given the timelines. So, we know Polaris is most likely aimed to be releasing in June, right? Let's say June, July time. Whether that's a paper launch or an actual physical launch is subject to interpretation, but let's, for the sake of argument, say that it's a real launch which is going to happen, let's say late July, let's say June, July. Well, in which case, it doesn't make sense in terms of the production phases of HBM2. With HBM2, we've got the introduction of 4GB chips, which is going to be happening in Q3, and then 8GB chips, which is going to happen in Q4. And the timelines just do not match up, particularly when you consider it takes a while for GPUs to be produced. It's not like, oh, okay, well, they're shipping them in Q3. Let's say, for the sake of argument, they start shipping them in September. Let's say they start shipping them September the 1st. It does not mean that they're going to have sufficient numbers of those GPUs to then ship to customers by September the 7th. It just doesn't work. It's going to be a couple of months later minimum for them to even start getting close to the numbers to start filtering to retail, and then there's the actual shipping of them, getting them to retailers. It's a while, and that's why most likely AMD are going the very same way Nvidia are rumoured to be going, which is GDDR5X or HBM1. Now, what's rather interesting is I actually dug up a bit of information that I actually found last year. Suffice to say, SK Hynix are rumoured to be in possession of a technology which bypasses the 4GB limit of HBM1. Unfortunately, there's not much information, so how close this is to reality, we're not certain, but there were certainly reports going around, and this dual link interposer essentially will allow you to bypass that limit and go up to 8GB. Now, I think it's fair to say that 8GB HBM1 is enough to power Polaris, 4GB probably not. So it's either that they're going to be going 4GB HBM1, it could potentially be utilized in dual GPU configurations, because we know how DirectX 12 functions with, Crossfire / SLI. It's much better. It's able to utilize memory much more efficiently, so memory is not completely mirrored. But even so, it wouldn't really be how most folks would want to spend their cash. So it's possible we're going to be seeing GDDR5X, which, as I've mentioned previously, offers twice the bandwidth per pin compared to traditional GDDR5 technology. You're looking at 14 versus just 7 Gbps, which is quite the difference indeed. Now, what does this mean for the rest of their GPUs? Well, this means that most likely we're going to be seeing the advent of Vega actually being what we'd kind of expected Greenland to be. So basically Greenland is being pushed back and Greenland is essentially Vega. Now, whether AMD are going to be changing some of the technology under the hood, your guess is as good as mine, and they're remaining somewhat tight-lipped, but it's pretty damn impressive. And I covered a video just yesterday. If you want to go ahead and check it out on the channel, I'll try to remember to link it in this video, where AMD did show off Hitman running DirectX 12 at 1440p at 60 FPS with all the settings at maxed, and the GPU was supposedly not breaking any sweat at all. It was doing it easily. Unfortunately, we don't know whether that was the maximum it could achieve or how expensive that card is. For example, and obviously I'm just being completely and utterly ridiculous in these statements, but if the GPU is like £150 and it's managing to achieve that, that's incredible. On the other hand, if it costs like £600 and it's achieving that, then it's less incredible. But that does bring me to the next point. You see that segue is smooth, right? And that is performance per dollar and the immersive era. Now, this is something I did touch on yesterday, but I wanted to add to it. That would be the performance per dollar ratio. Essentially, this means that if you were to look at a couple of different GPUs, let's say for the sake of argument, we look at the R9 380X or the R9 390, and you compare those to the Fury X, it's fair to say that in terms of what you get for your money, the Fury X is inferior. Now, it doesn't mean it's a bad card, but just like the Titans, just like the 980 Ti, A, lot of folks can't afford it, and B, you're not really getting a massive increase in performance compared to the equivalents of the R9 390 or the GTX 970 or potentially the GTX 980. It's like, especially with the cost reductions of the GTX 980 and the other cards I've just mentioned, those are really, really, really enticing cards. In other words, they're better tracking with Moore's Law, and they're better tracking with what we're expecting as gamers, and this is obviously not what AMD or anyone else wants. And one of the benefits of 14nm FinFET process is it does drive down the cost for the production of these cards. And it's quite interesting because Raja Koduri recently said, and I quote, "What you'll see us do is completely different with Polaris 10 and 11. We are really focused trying to bring FinFET technology within its amazing performance per watt to as many segments as possible. As many ranges of performance I can. I tell you, you and your readers, you'll be pleased at what we're going to do with this thing, and you'll be surprised. We're looking at the entire gamut of players, how many millions of them there are. What they buy, the performance per dollar aspect. How do we make it sweet for them with the performance per dollar aspect?" And yes, he did kind of say that a couple of different ways. But still, the point being, when you listened to what AMD was saying, and it wasn't just AMD, they had a whole bunch of folks on the stage. Whether it was the guys over at Fox, whether it was the guys over at Crytek, whether it was Ubisoft, whether it was bloody Microsoft, it was irrelevant. It was one thing that consistently, a theme which just ran through the event, and that was, we need more performance with what we've got. In fact, I'm not even joking, I don't remember the chap's name, but there was a guy from Fox, and apparently AMD called them and said, what do we need to provide you to basically improve your virtual reality experiences and to be able to basically give you the tools that you need to create what you want. And he said, and I quote, "bigger guns." Those words exactly. They need more performance. And it was kind of a way for them to sell the Radeon Duo, Pro Duo. But still, and this goes to the immersive era. So this leads to what AMD are considering the new era of entertainment. Now, it's still kind of early to know whether this is real in terms of like how many people are going to adopt it. But essentially speaking, it means that the game engine is what a lot of entertainment is going to be using. Whether this is a director wants to kind of pre-plan a movie, or some other form of entertainment, whether it's going to be a virtual reality experience that you might enjoy at your cinema, whether it's a networking social event like Facebook, but actually kind of meeting in reality. Like imagine going to a bar, speaking to, you know, your friends or what have you, and actually having this, you know, thing where the bartender and half the crowd are virtual. You don't know who's who, and that is where they're going. This is the immersive era, and the reason they're saying game engines is because they've already got complex AI scripts, they've got networking, excellent audio, they've got the ability to easily animate and create characters, and it's going that way. Unfortunately, we do need considerably more power, which is something I touched on once again yesterday. Essentially, where we are now, you need 1,000,000 times that performance to be able to simulate full presence virtual reality. That's not photorealism in VR. We're talking full presence. So if you're walking down the street in virtual reality, if I basically drugged you, you were asleep, I put a VR headset on you, for a few moments you would not realise that you were in virtual reality. It would be so immersive that you would probably just be like, what the hell? How am I on top of Mount Everest or what have you? And this is basically coming into the number of pixels, the speed that we need to produce pixels on screen, and that is also going up exponentially, unfortunately, just because of the quality of displays. Now, I feel that the best way to finish this video is Cannon Lake and Kaby Lake. So, Kaby, of course, as we know, is on track for this year. When this year? Q3 2016. It's going to be 14nm, and its successor, Cannon Lake, is supposedly going to be available 1 year afterwards. So, for those of you who are not too great with maths, then that's Q3 2017. Unfortunately, there were some, I guess you could say, hiccups from the production, and that's why it slowed down a little bit. But benchlife.info have managed to get a roadmap which does show that the CPUs are on track from when they initially hoped. What does this mean? Well, it should be quite an interesting configuration. Supposedly there are going to be multiple iterations of Kaby and Cannon Lake and Skylakes over the next couple of years. And these are going to be everything from dual cores to quad cores plus. It's kind of weird, really, how they're going to be handling this. Because what it would appear, you might remember that Sandy Bridge, which was released way back in the day, 2011, which is still ridiculously competitive today. Seriously, if you bought like a 2500K, 2600K on release, you're probably a very happy camper even now. They were first produced at 32nm, but the main thing is they had 4 cores with 4 or 8 threads. Once again, we're focusing on the 2500K or 2600K here, right? The weird thing is that Kaby Lake is still going to maintain the same number of cores and same number of threads. Now, obviously, there are going to be some differences. You're going to start seeing, for example, the reduction in the size of the manufacturing process, and we don't know how many cores Cannon Lake is going to have. Cannon Lake, of course, is going to happen a year later, so it's possible that Kaby Lake, let's say it's going to have a slightly higher IPC than Zen per core. So, for the sake of argument, let's say that Skylake is 100, right? Let's say it's 100%. Let's say Zen is, I'm going to throw it out there and say 104%. let's say Kaby Lake is 110%. I'm saying these numbers, just pulling them out my ass, because roughly 10% increase from Haswell to Skylake. It does depend on the application, but it's typically between 5 and 15%, so I'm just splitting the difference and saying 10. Well, let's say, for the sake of argument, Kaby Lake has a 5 to 7% advantage over Zen, for sake of argument. But then you're in this really weird position where it could be that AMD have the core advantage, especially with DirectX 12 and other APIs, and a lot of applications now. So it could be Intel's Enthusiast platform, the equivalent of the Broadwells, or the equivalent of the Skylake E's. Oh, I meant to say Broadwell E, excuse me. So Broadwell E or Skylake E, that might be offer better performance than Zen, but it could be for the regular desktops, Zen offers better price / performance, which is, I guess we can only wait and see, really. There were a couple of periods in time where AMD did beat AMD did beat Intel in terms of price / performance. So at the really screaming end, Intel was slightly better, but for the average user, AMD came out on top. This is particularly true for gaming, and now we're starting to really move towards multi-threading. And as we all know, with gamers not just packing in increased number of CPU cores, but also the increased number of GPUs, and this is even something that we saw over at the conference yesterday, a Caspian conference, where they were saying scalability, 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 scalability. And you might wonder why I just said that like a dozen times over. Seriously, it was droned into your head. And in fact, Raja Koduri, I don't remember the exact quote, but not verbatim, he said something along the lines of, it may be cheaper to essentially buy middle range / slightly better GPUs and pretty much crossfire them or run them in multiple sets in your system. And with better APIs, which can much better take advantage of this, I wouldn't be surprised if this is true. Let's face it, with virtual reality, you're going to need that. You know, the pixel resolutions are just becoming insane. They really are. They're just getting to the point now where, like, 4K is nothing. In the next couple of years, we're going to see displays which are just considerably higher than that. We're going to see displays which are like, you know, 7,000 by 4,000-ish pixels. And, you know, you're going to see this, the advent of 120Hz displays / 4K absolutely the norm. And, you know, most PC gamers know that you've got around 16 ms to render a frame if you want to maintain 60 FPS, right? It just is how it is. But when you actually half that, because you want to hit 120 or above, and that's what you need for virtual reality, it's going to be absolutely crazy over the next couple of years. I tell ye, it's going to be absolute madness. It's kind of cool though, isn't it? At least I'm excited. It is pretty awesome, not gonna lie. So does the I guess news, and to be fair, AMD have not confirmed that HBM2 thing regarding Polaris. Am I disappointed? No. Because I think, to be honest, GDDR5X, HBM1 and other technologies we've got, I think they're enough. I think we've got enough bandwidth to service what we've got, especially if better color compression or other bandwidth saving techniques are implemented. I don't have a problem with it. And it's kind of interesting because if AMD have managed to get 2.5 times performance per watt with Polaris, not using HBM2 and instead using GDDR5X, what the hell are they going to manage with the next iteration of GPUs? I mean, what the hell are they going to manage when it comes with Vega? What the hell are they going to manage when it comes to Navi? Seriously, it's going to be absolutely crazy. And by AMD, you can also supplement that with NVIDIA quite as happily. Anyway, As you all know, GDC, excuse me, is still piling on. There have been a couple of very interesting conferences on DirectX 12 and some other bits and bobs, and I will be doing some analysis over the next couple of days. However, I'm trying to kind of wait because I want to throw everything into breakdowns and articles as it makes sense, rather than covering each and everything, because I'll be here until Christmas. So there's already been a couple of ones from the folks over at Remedy that's definitely in my maybe pile to do an analysis for. Definitely going to do some more stuff on virtual reality, and so hopefully you'll join me. But as usual, if you do want to find out more information, do check out the links in the video description, and if you could like, share, do that normal stuff, and definitely subscribe, I'd be greatly appreciative. Anyway, for now, take care of yourselves. Have a good evening, or morning, or day, or what have you. Bye for now.